The sad story of Pata Seca, the man who fathered over 200 slaves against his will. This is one story in the history of transatlantic slave era that will leave you with goosebumps. The unimaginable dehumanizing act of how enslaved African individuals were forced to produce children who will in turn become slaves, one would, as why were enslaved man and women forced to mate and produce more slaves, and how did this one man, Pata Seca, manage to father over 200 slaves in a particular slave breeding farm? Well, to have a clear understanding of this dark chapter of the history, we will go back in time to the year 1808 when the slave trade in the United States was abolished. But before we proceed with the video, please, if you haven't subscribed yet and you found value in this video, kindly hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. Share your opinion in the comment section below. However, this marked the beginning of a horrific new chapter for Black African slaves, while the trade itself was prohibited. Slavery itself was not abolished. This is because slave owners were allowed to keep the slaves they already had, but no new slaves could be imported from Africa. This presented a problem for the slave owners. They needed more slaves to work on their plantations in order to maintain their profits and lifestyles, so the slave masters were determined to find a quick solution to tackle this shortage of slaves. They saw the ability of Black women slaves to have children as a means to replenish their workforce. Therefore, they came up with a despicable solution reminiscent of animal breeding farms. Black men and women slaves were forced to mate with the sole purpose of producing more children who would be enslaved. This were done without considering the desires or well-being of these enslaved Africans. Terms like breeders breeding slaves, the terminology of childbearing women's reproductive phase, and the stage of being too advanced in age to reproduce entered into widespread usage during this period, characterized by unfavorable circumstances. Initially, slave owners employed a meticulous selection procedure with the aim of optimizing the production and profitability of their enslaved individuals, mostly motivated by economic considerations. Slave owners employed precise criteria that systematically deprived enslaved individuals of their inherent humanity and subjected them to indescribable levels of pain. The primary factors considered in the selection process were the physical characteristics of the enslaved individuals, with a special emphasis on their strength and overall health. Those individuals who possessed robust features were preferred, since it was believed that their kids would inherit these traits, hence making them more suitable for labor-intensive duties. In this context, the phenomenon of stark commodification has resulted in the devaluation of human beings, reducing them to mere instruments for the purpose of enhancing productivity. Gender has played a prominent role in this process, as women have been compelled to assume reproductive duties in order to facilitate the expansion of the labor force, while males have been selected based on their perceived potential to contribute to production. The selection process of white supremacist slave owners favored younger individuals with the assumption of higher fertility rates, taking into account the number of children and their ages. This preference for younger individuals mirrored the principles of animal breeding, where healthy males are sought to mate with multiple females. Among the many Black slave men chosen, one notable individual was Pata Seca, who distinguished himself by fathering a significant number of children, essentially forming an entire village. Unfortunately, his children were destined to become slaves, forced into labor on cotton and sugar plantations. It is worth noting that behind the name Pata Seca, there existed a man named Roque, Jose Florencio, a native of Africa who was forcibly transported to Brazil as a slave, endured a life characterized by the harsh consequences of oppression and the degrading institution of slavery. His identity and autonomy were systematically stripped away, reducing him to a mere breeder whose sole purpose was to comply with his master's orders to procreate with various women slaves, thereby producing more enslaved children. The circumstances surrounding these coerced unions were undoubtedly deplorable, evoking a profound sense of inhumanity that Pata Seca, as José Florencio was known, must have experienced. Notably, Pata Seca stood as an imposing figure, measuring an impressive height of 7 feet and 8 inches, and was specifically assigned the responsibility of engaging in sexual relations with black women slaves. This regrettable practice transpired notwithstanding the fact that these women were pregnant and compelled to engage in labor on the estates. Pata Seca's physical characteristics, including his elongated lower limbs and robust extremities, resulted in his acquisition of the moniker Pata Seca, which connotes aridity and destitution within the framework of the practice of awarding animal appellations to African American slaves residing on agricultural estates. This designation was bestowed upon him due to his beneficial advantages. The owner of Pata Seca enforced his participation in mating with black women slaves. This practice was driven by the objective of producing slave offspring who possessed tall stature, muscular physique, and strong hands. These physical attributes were perceived as advantageous for generating increased profits for slave owners during that historical period. Additionally, prevalent superstition suggested that tall men with slender legs had a higher likelihood of fathering male offspring, which was highly sought after for labor-intensive duties. As a result, Pata Seca, also referred to as Roque, was unexpectedly assigned the responsibility of a breeder by his proprietor. This foreboding designation entailed the task of impregnating the female slaves residing on the agricultural estate. The lineage of Pata Seca has endured across successive generations, with an estimated 30% of the populace in the Santa Eudoxia district being descendants. The individuals from São Carlos possess the ability to trace their ancestral lineage to a particular individual. This individual played a significant role as a breeder with the objective of improving the workforce of their owner by adding genetically favorable features. Pata Seca, in his own right, was subjected to dehumanizing treatment akin to that of a highly esteemed breeding horse. His owner saw the inherent value in his robust physical attributes and unwavering work ethic, perceiving his biological superiority as an opportunity for exploitation and financial gain. These children were predetermined to follow in the footsteps of their parents and were compelled to live a life of enslavement on plantations. This was done in order to maintain their inherent strengths and create a robust workforce for the slave owners. The ultimate objective was to have a sufficient number of slaves to sustain the entire institution of slavery, thereby eliminating the need to import more individuals from Africa. These individuals were dehumanized and treated as animals, coerced into procreation to increase the enslaved population for the benefit of their owners. This abhorrent practice serves as a stark example of the cruelty and inhumanity inherent in slavery, where human beings were treated as mere instruments for economic gain. Not only did this system perpetuate the institution of slavery, but it also perpetuated a cycle of oppression, as children were born into a life of servitude and suffering. The examination of this distressing historical narrative provides insight into the endurance and fortitude exhibited by the enslaved persons who skillfully maneuvered through these oppressive conditions. Furthermore, it serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring ramifications stemming from systemic exploitation. Thank you for watching. I would want to take a moment to express our appreciation for the support you have provided. The support and engagement of our viewers serves as a source of motivation for us to produce more compelling melanin-rich content. We aim to provide pleasant material for new viewers. We request that you consider subscribing to our channel and activate the notification bell to keep informed about all our uploads. We strongly urge you to share our videos with your friends and family who may also find them intriguing. Peace.